Okay, and so in this video we want to look at the difficulties with processing information, and it's very common for people on the autism spectrum to be slow processors. If you have, for example, asked your autistic spouse to implement some kind of a change that was going to disrupt his routine or structure, you probably got a lot of pushback. But you may have also found that once he slept on it, weighed the pros and cons, overanalyzed it, ruminated about it, then he finally made peace with this change that you wanted to implement. So right out of the gate, I want to tell you that your autistic spouse is a slow processor, and if you're not patient with his process of trying to decide if he wants to implement a new change, then you're going to get pushback, and you've been warned. People on the autism spectrum often have problems processing information from one or more of their 7 sensory systems, which would be sight, balance, touch, movement, smell, taste, and hearing. Now, these processes take place at an unconscious level, and they work together to help with attention and learning. Each system has specific receptors that pick up information that is relayed to the brain. The sensory characteristics of people on the autism spectrum are often responsible for their processing difficulties, negative behaviors, and unpleasant emotions. Now, here's a crucial point. The sensory systems are also involved in what we call emotional processing. People use their emotions as a sensory system too. But people on the autism spectrum vary in their ability to process information emotionally, in part because at least one other sense often doesn't work well. For example, it would be difficult for a person on the autism spectrum who also has auditory processing problems to figure out whether a person's voice suggests friendliness or meanness. Also, people on the spectrum have a hard time using their emotions or desires to process information and act appropriately in interpersonal settings. Now, processing is a system that helps the individual on the spectrum to select, prepare, and begin to interpret incoming information. People on the spectrum have difficulty with processing, may have a range of problems related to regulating the use of incoming information. And there are 5 processing skills, which include satisfaction control, focal maintenance, depth and detail of processing, cognitive activation, and saliency determination. Now let's look at each of these in turn. Satisfaction control involves the person's ability to allocate enough attention to activities or topics of moderate or low levels of interest. People on the spectrum with poor satisfaction control have difficulty concentrating on activities that are not exciting enough. Focal maintenance allows the person to focus on important information for the appropriate period of time. People on the spectrum may not concentrate long enough on some things and may concentrate too long on others. Depth and detail of processing controls how intensely people can concentrate on highly specific data. It enables them to focus deeply enough to recognize and remember necessary details. But people on the autism spectrum tend to remember a lot of details that relate to their area of special interest, but may not remember much outside of that interest. Cognitive activation is a form of active processing that connects new information to what has already been learned through prior knowledge and experience. Now, people on the autism spectrum who are inactive processors are unable to connect to prior knowledge to assist their understanding of new information. And in contrast, people on the spectrum who are overactive processors are reminded of too much prior knowledge, making it difficult for them to maintain focus. And lastly, saliency determination involves selecting which incoming information is the most important. People with ASD who have difficulty with this control may be distracted by things that are not relevant and miss important information being presented. So how do you know if your autistic spouse has difficulty processing information? He can't distinguish between what is important and what isn't. He finishes processing what someone is saying before that individual has finished expressing her idea. He focuses for too brief a period, or he focuses for too long of a period. He focuses too superficially or too deeply on information presented. He has an idea and knowledge of what he wants to say in his mind, but when he attempts to share this idea, it doesn't come out right. He has difficulty concentrating new information with information already known. He has problems shifting focus from one subject or activity to another. The person has trouble picking up the main ideas in conversations with others. The individual may have to repeat himself several times before the other person understands what he is saying. He misses a lot of things that are obvious to others. He only pays attention to exciting information or highly stimulating activities. He processes one word that someone says, but then thinks of something completely unrelated to what that person is saying. He processes too little or too much information, and he tries to understand the meaning of each word someone is saying rather than being able to automatically understand the whole gist and general meaning of the sentence. So this may explain why when you want to implement a radical change, for example, maybe a house renovation, a vacation, having a child, moving, etc., being a slow processor, the individual on the autism spectrum will have great difficulty shifting gears very quickly. A disruption to routine and structure that was already established raises anxiety, and as a result, the NT spouse will be on the receiving end of a lot of resistance and perhaps even anger.